Hey everybody, today I'm going to walk you through 3 different text animations that I'm going to create right here on my computer in Apple Motion. You guys have been loving these motion tutorials, so I'm just going to give more to you. These are the 3 looks we're going to create today. I will create chapters for each of them in the description box below so you can jump right to the one that catches your eye. But if you like all 3, let's just start at the beginning. Are you ready? All right, so just to let you in on what we've got going on here, I have used the concentric shapes generator to get this triangular background. I added a vignette with some darkening around the edges and some blurring to give it some depth. And then I drew on this rectangle here. And now let's start adding our text. So I'm going to hit T for the text tool, and I'm going to type in here seasick, which is what we are calling this look. I'm going to change the font to, where are you? Helvetica New. And let's make it bold. Perfect. Let's make it bigger. That's good. Let us position it so it's like sitting on top of our pink rectangle. And let's change the color to the same pink. Cool. Okay. Now let's get in on the action. So the idea is that this rectangle that these letters are sitting on is going to rotate back and forth as if it's on a boat, and these letters are going to kind of slide back and forth with the motion of the boat. So let's get these letters sliding around. The first thing we want to do is make sure that in our project pane, we are selected on the seasick text. Let's head up on over to behaviors, text basic, and we're going to hit slide in. So now let's look down at our timeline. So the slide in effect starts right at the beginning of our timeline. The text fades in and slides in character by character. Let's just play it back in real time. So that is what the default effect looks like, but we want to change that. The first thing I want to do is take this slide in effect, and I want to slide it down later in my timeline. So let's play it back. So what you see here is that the seasick text is here, and then as soon as the effect starts, it disappears and then fades in and slides in. We need to make changes there, obviously. So let's select that slide in effect in our timeline. Let's head up over to our inspector window and let's start making some changes. The first thing we want to do is drop down this arrow. Here is the opacity bar. I'm actually going to pump that up to 100. So right away, we lose that fading effect, which is what we want. Okay. Now, you might notice that the seasick text is in one position, and then when the slide in effect starts happening, it jumps. Do you see that? We're going to fix that later, but I'm not going to worry about that quite yet. We have to do a workaround to get rid of that. Okay, now let's look back at our inspector window and let's do the drop down for controls and make some changes here. The first thing I want to do is change the sequencing from to to. Now I'm going to play that back and show you what it does, which is not the look we want. So to correct that, we're going to go from direction, we're going to go from backward to forward. And there it is. That's what I want. Okay, now again, you'll see that the text bounces back. We're gonna fix that. All right, now I'd like to add another slide in effect. So I'm going to select seasick in my timeline. I'm going to go back to behaviors, text basic, slide in. And I'm going to, now I've got slide in 1. This is the second one that we've dropped in. I'm going to slide it down here later in the timeline. And again, we are going to head on over to the inspector window. Make sure that you're working on slide in 1. That's the second effect that we've dropped in. Change the format again to opacity, and then controls this time I'm actually going to leave it with from and backwards. So the text slides left, and then the text slides right. Okay. Now what we want to do is get the rocking motion going. So we are going to select in our project pane seasick. I'm going to hold down the Apple key and select the rectangle, and then I'm going to right click and group these guys together. So now any effects we add to this group are going to apply to both the rectangle and the text. So now what we're going to do is affect the rotation. So what I want the rectangle to do is when the text is sliding to the left, I actually want the rectangle and the text to dip. Hold on, I have to think about how this is going to look from your perspective. I think I want to go this way with it, but you know what I mean. I want the rectangle to rotate, and I want the letters to slide down like it's being affected by gravity. So what we want to do is add a keyframe on our group. So I'm highlighted in the group in the project pane. I'm going to go over to our inspector window, and I'm going to drop down the rotation menu here, and I'm going to add a keyframe on the Z axis. And then I'm going to play in my timeline and add another keyframe on the Z axis, and I'm going to change that rotation so the rectangle is now rotated. So what you can see here, and I've got my keyframe timeline open here. So if you don't see what I'm seeing down here at the bottom of my timeline with keyframe, is these three buttons here on the right control what you see. So now I'm just seeing all of my blocks of my content. And then if I hit these keyframes here, I can see this keyframe menu, and we can make changes to the timing here. So let me just play back and see how that came out. Okay, so it's not bad. I think what I would like to do is have the rotating start a little sooner. And so almost like the letters are hesitating before they actually slide. So in order to change the timing of that, I'm going to click on this first keyframe here. So here's a little trick. If I want to change the timing of my keyframe but not mess with the values here in this keyframe editor, what I'm going to do is click on that keyframe, hold down my mouse key, then hit the shift button and slide back. So what that's doing is it's changing the point in my animation where the keyframe lies, but it is not changing the value of the keyframe. So I'm not moving the rotation from 0 to 1 or whatever, which you could do in motion. I could just lift it up and down. And if you look here in the inspector window, you can see that those Z rotation values are changing, but that is not what I want to do. I want to keep it at 0, but I want it to happen earlier. So let's watch this. Cute, right? Okay. So one other thing I want to do with these keyframes is to have the motion sort of ease in and ease out instead of being such a linear motion. So in order to do that, we need to jump back into our keyframe timeline. I'm going to right click the keyframe and I'm going to hit ease both, ease both. Now let's make that rectangle rotate the other way. So I'm going to play down further in my timeline. Let us add a keyframe again on the Z rotation here in the inspector window. And I'm going to hit play, add another keyframe, and we are now going to rotate the other way. Okay, so let's assess what's happening here. I'm going to put my playhead at the top of the timeline and let's hit play. So far that looks great, but then at that point there, when the effect ends, that's where we're getting that jump. See that? So here's what I want to do. I want to select this text, this seasick text, right at the point, now I'm going to zoom in on my timeline so we can see really close, right at the end of the effect, right where the jump happens. I'm going to queue up my playhead, make sure I'm selected on seasick text, and we're going to go up to edit, and we're going to hit split. So what that has done is created two separate, I'm going to zoom out so you can see, two separate texts. Now, by default, both of them are highlighted. So any changes I make right now is going to impact both groups of text, which is not what I want. I'm going to make sure that I'm selected on this top one here. I'm going to modify the position of this. But to help myself, I'm going to actually change the color of this font. I'm just going to make it anything that's different from our pink. And I'm going to manually line it up with this text here. See that? So I'm going to drag this green text back so there's overlap, but I'm going to cue up my playhead to the end of the effect so we can see where the alignment is not quite right. And I'm going to go over to, in my inspector window, properties. I'm going to come on over to the X position and I'm going to change it until they are lined up. Now I changed the color of the font so I can see when they're perfectly aligned. You see that? So I can't see any of the pink peeking out from behind the green. Now I'm going to trim my clip so there's no overlap. Yeah, I'm like 1 frame off there. Let's go there. And then I'm going to change the color of the green text back to pink. So up to the inspector window, text. Oops. I'm just going to color pick to make sure it's perfect. And let me zoom back out and show you. Okay, and so now you see this jump here where the next effect comes in. Do you see that? See how it jumps back? Okay, so we're gonna do something very similar. We're gonna cue up our playhead right to the start of this effect instead of the end. I'm gonna select that CSIC1 text. That's the duplicate we made when we split the last time. We're gonna go back up to Edit, Split. So now let me show you, we've got 3 versions of that CSIC text. The first one is just called CSIC, the next one is CSIC1, and the third one is called CSIC11. Why they don't just make it CSIC2, I don't really know, but I'm not gonna worry about it. So let's see what we need to do here. We see this jump, and we want to modify this third text now, CSIC11. This is the one we need to fix. So I'm going to make sure that only one is highlighted, just CSIC11. I'm going to change the color to something really visible. And now I'm going to go back and drag CSIC1 here, this middle text. I'm going to extend the duration so we have that overlap. And I'm going to cue up my playhead to the first frame of our third text that has the effect on it. Let's just zoom in. Yep, we're perfectly queued up. I'm going to make sure I'm selected on that. And now I'm going to go back over to the inspector window and line those up perfectly. Perfect, perfect, perfect. We're going to change that color back. And then we're going to reduce the length of that middle text so that they are perfectly lined up and seamless. And there it is. Let's play it back. All right, so there you have it. That's how you do CSIC. Let's move on to our next effect. I'm calling this one Follow the Bouncing Ball. We've got like a little ball that's gonna highlight different words in our dynamic text. Here is what our setup looks like. This one's a little more simple. I've got the gradient stage, which you can find from the content folder in the Motion library. This is something that's already pre-existing. And I've typed in the text, follow the bouncing ball. I'm using Century Gothic Bold. I've made it kind of purple. So what we're going to do is first is animate this text. But before we do that, I actually want to group this text. This is something that's going to save us time later. So what you want to do is right click that text in your project pane and hit group, which I know seems weird because we're just grouping one element, but like I said, this is going to save us some time down the road. So the first thing we want to do is add some keyframes to the group. Now we want to make sure we're not selected on the text. We're actually selected on the group in the project pane. I'm going to go queue up my playhead to about a second in on my timeline. And we are going to start adding some keyframes. So I want to add a keyframe here on the position field. And then I'm going to manually arrow over in the timeline 8 frames. So with the arrow key 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I'm going to add another keyframe here in the inspector window, and I'm going to change this Y value to -50. So you can see we've gone from starting the text up here. Now we've moved it down. Now I'm going to go back into the timeline and arrow over another 8 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. and we're gonna make that value back to 0. So let's just play it back so I can show you what we've done. And if we want to actually see the keyframes, we can always open up that keyframe editor by hitting this icon in the right corner of the timeline. And there you go. You can see what we've got. I typed out follow the bouncing ball all as one element, but what I actually want is for them to be separate elements. So I've done the whole sentence just so I could see my positioning, make sure that spatially I've got the text lined up where I want it. But now we're actually going to make this text individual words so we can make them animate independently of each other. So to do that, we're going to duplicate the group. So I'm going to right click on the group and hit duplicate. And then I'm going to go into my new group. So this is group copy. I'm going to select the text and I'm going to change this text to just the word the. And then I'm going to position. Now don't reposition your group copy because you've got keyframes there. You want to reposition the text within your group, just the word the. And we want to make it line up with our text here. And then we're going to duplicate that group, duplicate. And again, I'm going to hit the text. I'm going to make this say bouncing. And then I'm going to change the position. Again, make sure you're on the text, not the whole group. And one more time. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is head on over to my initial text and I'm going to delete the words I don't need anymore. Now what we want to do is add our ball. So I'm just going to head on over to the middle of my screen here with all these little icons. I'm going to select this first shape tool. I'm going to grab the circle tool. And to make a perfect circle, I'm going to hold down the shift key while I click and drag my cursor. And there we go. There's a circle. And I'm just going to modify the properties of that circle over here in the inspector window. All right, so now that I look at my project pane, I see that my circle, I've kind of plopped it in the middle of the last group I was working on. I'm going to drag it up to the top so it's above all of my text. And I'm going to cue it up to the beginning of my timeline, make sure everything's aligned. And now what we're going to do is add a motion path to get the ball to kind of bounce on all of these words. So we're going to head on up to behaviors, basic motion, motion path. So let me show you what that's done. If we look in our timeline, we see this motion path effect. So with this motion path, the default is that the motion path lasts the duration of however long our object is in the timeline. The other default is that it has 2 points, a start point and an end point. But we can actually add points along the way and have it not just go in a straight line, but in any direction we want. Let me show you how to do that. I'm going to take my mouse cursor and I'm going to hover it along this red line that represents our motion path. I'm going to hold down on the keyboard the Option button and I get this little pen tool. And so what I can do is click along the timeline and add new points. I don't know how many I need. I'll figure it out later, but I'm just going to add a few points here. Now I can release that Option key and I can change where these points go. So what I first want is to start off frame with this circle. Then I'm going to drag this up. And then I want it to come and hit the L's in the word follow. You can see that we've got a very right angle at our first point in the motion path. The default, so this first point that I'm showing you right here, it defaults to a linear interpolation. I actually want to make it smooth. And so what you get are these little handles where you can actually make it sort of more curved. And so we've got kind of a more natural curvature to our motion path. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep adding points along my path. So we're really replicating the way a ball would actually move in real life. And then this is all going to happen very slowly, right? Because I've got it going the entire duration of my circle. Let's head on over to the timeline and reduce the duration it takes for this ball action to happen. I'm going to make sure this ball goes out of frame here. We've got the motion pretty well mapped out. You can see the bouncing is not happening at the appropriate time for each of my words. We're going to fix that now. So let's start with the first word, follow. I'm going to select the group in the project pane, and I'm going to open up my keyframe editor by hitting these 3 little keyframe buttons in the middle of the screen all the way to the right. And now we're going to play with the timing of these keyframes. Okay, so it needs the action, the follow needs to bounce down earlier. So in order to change these keyframes without modifying the value, we want to drag our cursor, select all of them, grab one of the keyframes with our mouse and hold down the mouse key, and then hit Shift and drag back. So we're not changing the value of our bounce, but we're moving the time of it. Oop, it's too soon. Okay, that one looks good. Let's move on to the next one, and we're going to do the same thing. Okay, so we've got our ball timed out perfectly with the dips with our words. The last thing I want to do is just like add shadows underneath the words, make it look a little bit more like it's in a 3D space, and the shadows are actually going to move along with the words. So let me show you how to do that. I'm actually going to group all of our groups, so the ball and the text. And then I'm going to duplicate that group. So now we've got 2 copies of all of our text and the ball. I'm actually going to rename this new group Shadow Group so we can keep everything straight. All right, so what we want to do is rotate the shadow group. We actually want to like flip it upside down. So on the X axis on the rotation in the inspector window for the whole shadow group, I'm going to modify it to 180. So we've actually flipped it upside down. Now you can see here, it's like a mirror reflection. I want to bring this like down pretty low, and then I want to make some modifications to this whole group. So the first thing I'm going to do is going over to filters, color, and I'm going to select colorize. And I'm going to make both I'm going to remap the blacks and the whites to black. And then I'm also going to add another filter to this entire group. Make sure it's selected. I'm going to add a blur. I'm going to go to Gaussian blur, and I'm going to crank up that value so it's really almost like unreadable. There's our shadow. Okay, that's follow the bouncing ball. Let's move on to our third and final tutorial. This one I'm calling Swing In. All right, so here in our Swing In demo, I'm actually going to go with a little bit of a holiday theme. So what I'm going to do is go on over to my library and grab the stripes generator, and I'm going to just kind of change the properties. I'm going to make sort of a candy cane look. And I'm going to rotate these stripes on an angle like so. And then I'm going to go into my project pane, select the stripes generator, and I'm going to group it. And then to the group, I'm going to add a rectangle mask like so. If I try to do this without grouping, the rectangle mask would be at the same angle as our stripes, and that's not what I want. I want this kind of candy cane look. And then the other thing I'm going to do is draw a line over this, and I'm going to add a fill, and I'm going to feather the fill so it kind of looks like it has a highlight, right? I'm going to shrink the size of this down. Now I need to add my text. So I'm actually just going to do this one letter at a time. Grab the text tool, and I'm going to type the letter S. I'm going to make it fairly large. I'm going to change the font to something fun. Let's use this June Gull. And I actually want to make the letters look almost like a gingerbread cookie, so with frosting on it. So I think I'm going to fill the face with a gradient, and I'm going to have green frosting since we already have the red candy cane. And I'm going to make the gradient radial instead of linear. There we go. And now I want to add an outline to sort of represent the cookie part that doesn't have frosting on it. So I'm going to also make that a gradient. And I'm going to expand the width on this so we see a lot of it. Kind of like that. What do you guys think? Does that look like a cookie to you? Okay, now it's time to add the swing effect. So the important thing is that I want to treat my candy cane and my letter all as one element. So in order to do that, I need to group them. So I'm going to select both of these items. I'm going to hit group. And so now this is all one element. I can move it all together. So what we want is for this entire thing to swing into the frame from the top. So let's head on over to behaviors and parameter and overshoot. So I'm going to apply the overshoot to this entire group. And then I need to go on over to my inspector window, and we need to decide what we're going to apply the overshoot effect to. So right now it's on none. We're actually going to go to properties, transform, rotation, and we want to affect the X axis. So let me first show you something important that you need to know. We are going to change the start value in the overshoot, and I want to show you what's happening here. Our image is sort of hinging from the middle instead of from the top. Do you see that? We need to change what's called the anchor point. So the anchor point is sort of telling motion where you want the candy cane to hinge from. So the default is that it's going to hinge from the middle. So you're going to get this kind of motion instead of hinging from the top as if it's hanging and hinging this way. Does that make sense? So we need to change the anchor point, and it's really easy to do that. You just need to know where to look. And that is to go on over to this toolbar, sort of the center of the screen where you have your arrow cursor. You want to modify that arrow by hitting the drop down and selecting anchor point. And then what you're going to get is this cursor. What you want to do is see this blue dot. That's where we really want to draw our attention. I'm going to hit these arrows and just move them until that, like, the center of the circle is sort of where I think the candy cane might be suspended from. So now let's see what we're going to see. See, it's flipping around. Still 360 degrees, but the hinge of it is here at the top. So let's make some modifications because I actually don't want this to go 360. Let's queue up our playhead to the start of our group, and let's just play with this value till it's just like, let's start at 0 and let's play with this value till it's just out of frame. There we go. So what you're seeing there is it's not very swingy, is it? It's just kind of stuttering at the end. The first thing I want to do is extend the length of my overshoot. I actually think it needs to be a little longer than what we have. And then we want to go in over to the inspector window and play with the ramp duration. It's defaults to 35. I actually want to bring it down. And that kind of feels more swingy, doesn't it? And then we can add more cycles. I would just play with these values until it feels like yeah, that's what, you know, the speed and the swinginess that we could expect. Okay, so we've got one letter swinging in. Now we've got to make the rest of our letters. It's really simple to do this. We're just going to keep duplicating our group. It's going to take me a minute to do it, but for you, I'm going to speed it up so you don't have to sit through the whole process. Okay, so I've got all of my letters typed out here and basically kind of in place where I want them. Now I need to make some adjustments. So you'll see here that on the eyes, the candy cane is not centered with the actual letter. So I'm just going to go in and move the letters and just make these quick adjustments. And if you want to get a little bit more stylized and creative with this, you can actually maybe, let's see here, rotate maybe the letters and have the candy cane hanging, like be a little off center. Not everything needs to be perfectly centered. Okay, so now let's play it back and you'll see that we've got all of the letters swinging in at once, of course, because we duplicated the group, so the timing's all going to be the same. So now what we want to do is we want to manually go in and delay letter by letter. All right, so cute. And to finish it off, I'm just gonna drop in a Christmas background that I got off of Storyblocks. And there you go, 3 really cute text animations, custom made in motion. You know, obviously these looks are very specific. I have the hot pink with the, you know, geometric shape for the seasick one. I mean, you can use that effect and stylize it in any way you want. Tell me what you guys think about these text animations. Do you want to see more from motion every time I ask you guys that? Everyone says yes, but let me know in the comments, did you like this? Which one is your favorite? What do you want to see from me next? Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again.